Hey everybody, Off the Mic Sports Network here, another edition of Off the Top Rope. I got to get to an interesting quote. Um, Illustrates a topic that has been so. Let me start off by saying this and sort of set the table for you guys. So there's been a lot of discussion, recently, specifically, and I don't get this. Um, TKO clearly has had a lot of drawbacks, and this has not been a good year for TKO and WWE. WrestleMania was not good. A lot of the booking and a lot of the decisions that have been made have not been good. There's been an excessive amount of commercials. Some of these roster cuts have not been great. The R-Truth one really came to light, and that's going to actually lead me to my point. But a lot of people are like, yeah, hey, Vince McMahon, man, those days were much better than this. I'm paraphrasing, but that's really what people were saying. Um, so I want to bring up a quote from Bishop Dyer. You may be asking, who the hell is Bishop Dyer? That's Baron Corbin. Tom Pestock is his real name, but he goes by Bishop Dyer now that he's out of WWE and he's left. So Bishop Dyer is now hosting weekly on Busted Open on Sirius XM. And so he was on the show this week, and basically he was quoted talking about the recent departure. So here's what Bishop Dyer had to say. He said, quote, "Say what you want about Vince. Vince cared about his talent. He cared about the fans. Everything else in his life is his business and whatever he's dealing with. Guys like Taker, someone who's been loyal. When you watch Vince talk about Taker, he starts crying because he loves him and his loyalty. R-Truth has been nothing but loyal. He's done everything that's ever been asked. He's gotten everything to work, even some shit that's really questionable over the years. He's made it very entertaining. I think if you're sitting in that locker room, you have to realize, oh shit, if I'm not on TV for a month, it could be next." And so more or less what he was talking about is basically, okay, the locker room should feel uncomfortable, and TKO is kind of like, making it seem like an NFL style model. I'm not going to read the rest of the quote, but specifically the first part of that quote about Vince McMahon is what jumped out to me, because Baron Corbin was presented in a very specific way when he was in WWE, and a lot of us didn't like it. Listen, I actually grew to kind of respect Baron Corbin because he was put in a lot of tough situations. And I just kind of appreciated, like, how hard he worked, and, like, yeah, he was probably over pushed a little bit, but I found and this kind of leads into this whole narrative that TKO's bad, Vince McMahon was good. I don't know if you guys were watching the same product I was watching, like, back in, 2017, 2018, 2019, like, those last couple years before COVID, and then the few years, the Thunderdome era, and then the 2 years after, before he was, forced out in 2022. First of all, this notion that roster cuts didn't happen under Vince McMahon and Vince loved the talent, that's bullshit. That is bullshit. Vince McMahon let go of a bunch of people in the middle of a worldwide pandemic, global pandemic, and cut them loose. He hoarded talent when they could have gone to AEW when AEW was in the position, much like what Tony Khan's doing now. If you honestly think that WWE would be better off with Vince McMahon still in power, you are fucking delusional. Delusional. Look, I get it. There are a lot of problems with the way TKO is running this company, is running WWE. I totally understand that. But did you guys remember how bad week-to-week television was in WWE? It's the reason why AEW exists. It's the reason why AEW exists. That television product was so bad, and there were so many questionable decisions made. At least this product is semi-watchable. It's not as good as it was the last couple of years, and there's been a lot of, questionable decisions that have been made specifically in 2025. But this whole notion, yeah, and roster cuts, and all these veterans being let go. First of all, Vince McMahon cut people and released them out of their contracts. R-Truth's contract and Carlito's contract, let's just go with recency bias here. Those two guys had their contracts expire. That is actually the more diplomatic way to do this, okay? So, like, listen, I get it. Bishop Dyer and, like a lot of these these guys who have left WWE, they were very loyal to Vince McMahon. And, on some level, Vince McMahon did a lot for this business. And in that respect, I get the loyalty aspect to that. But to act like he cared about talent, are you fucking kidding me? Really? Like I said, this is a guy who cut like 30, 40 wrestlers in the middle of in the middle of a fucking pandemic when people were dying and didn't have anywhere to work. Like, what? I get it, man. It's the optics with TKO are not great when they are letting people go, releasing people, or letting their contracts expire due to like, financial reasons. When they're touting all of this money that they're making, and they're pushing certain narratives about them. Um and it can upset a lot of people. And I have talked to many friends who are upset with, like, hey, the absurd ticket prices. I wanted to go to WrestleMania earlier this year in Las Vegas because it's basically like a 4 or 5 hour drive from me from Los Angeles to get to Vegas. And I've got family out there, so it would have made a lot of sense for me to go out. And also, it's Las Vegas, man. So I wanted to go. It was way too expensive for me. I went to the one out here in Los Angeles 2 years ago, way easier and way more manageable because that was right before the merger happened and right before they signed off on the deal with TKO. And I wanted to go to Money in the Bank. It's like $200, $300 to sit in the upper tank. I'm not going to go do that. I get it. I get why people are upset. But from an in-ring perspective and from a television content, it is so much better than the Vince McMahon era. Also, let's not forget, before you guys start like, trying to have, revisionist history about Vince McMahon and what he did for WWE, um, Vince McMahon is the reason why we're in this predicament right now. Let's not forget that. Vince McMahon got forced his way back into the company, did a sale, and he wanted to be in power. And then once TKO got wind of that and realized, oh, he's a deplorable human being with all of these fucking heinous allegations against him for sex trafficking and all this other shit that's been going on, they were like, no, we're getting you out of here. You're not coming back. And that was when, hey, everybody was like, yay, Vince is gone. You guys are forgetting that. Vince McMahon tried to screw his family over because he didn't want Stephanie McMahon and Triple H in power. Okay? He didn't want that. And at some point, and we'll talk about this in another video, at some point, I think Triple H is not going to be the head booker of WWE. He's not going to be the head of creative. That's where this is heading. And that's unfortunate. But for all of you people just trying to rewrite history and act like WWE would be in a better spot if Vince McMahon had never sold the company and none of these allegations would have happened and we would just be fine and dandy. You guys weren't watching the same product I was the previous, the last 5 years that he was in power. I would even go as far back as to like 2009, 2010. Like some of this shit was unwatchable, man. You guys forget how bad it was. And that's the reason why they were losing attendance and they were having bad ratings numbers. And one of the main reasons why AEW came in and became so popular as an alternative, because they were just not WWE. And that's why a lot of people are, AEW sickos, and it's more power to them. But you people acting like, hey, just because, hey, a couple roster cuts have happened here and there, ticket prices are more expensive. Guys, let's be real. If we went back to those times and I would rather have better television and I would rather have, a better product out there, which it's been lacking this year. I would rather have that than, have what Vince McMahon had cheaper ticket prices. I'd rather have a better show to watch. Okay. And that's what this is. Okay. Now, we'll see where this goes down the road in terms of how this looks with TKO, and if maybe they don't try to turn this into a fucking machine and effectively, kind of ruin wrestling. But I'm not there yet. Okay, like I'm willing to see this thing out. Like I said, I went through the dark days of dealing with WWE and some of the shit that Vince McMahon was doing for years, and this was before like we knew he was a creepy motherfucker, but obviously none of the allegations really surprised us at all. But you saw it with the way that he booked and the way that he handled certain things, whether it be the women's division, whether it be certain superstars here and there, whether it just, there was a lot of bad things that were going on in this company when he was in power. So again, I'm not going to have you guys just rewrite history and act like the previous 5-6 years before Triple H took over weren't terrible, okay? Come on. What are we doing, man? So, anyway, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.